people and events David Morgan spoke about at our last general meeting gave me the idea to put together the program I've planned for you today. Unlike David, I have only a single topic to speak about that revolves around a famous man who came to Montreal in 1939, 80 years ago. My ability to tell this fascinating story would not be possible if my grandfather had not unintentionally left several breadcrumbs for me to follow that would ultimately help bring everything into sharp focus. Some of you may know that my grandfather, W.M. Mac Wyatt, was the editor and publisher of the Montreal Times weekly newspaper from 1935 until its sale to the Shelby County Reporter in 1959. In addition to being a newspaperman, he was also a printer and a politician. He served 5 terms unopposed as mayor of Montreal from 1948 until his death in 1966. But the one thing I remember about him above all else is that he was an avid reader of just about anything. In addition to his steady diet of Alabama's big city as well as small-town newspapers and weekly and monthly national magazines, his tastes extended to the amazingly dense congressional record as well as the Christian Science Monitor. He believed that the Christian Science Monitor was the only unobjective newspaper in the world. That's why I read it. It wasn't that he was a Christian Scientist. When he died, his small library came to my mother, and his books were dutifully shelved in plain sight in our living room and forgotten about for years. These same books eventually made their way to me with the passage of time, and it was not until more than 30 years after his death that I finally paid attention to just what these books were. I saw and ignored the book you see here throughout my teens and 20s, and remember it was just one of my mother's possessions. Thanks to the University of Montreal English Department and Professor Bill Cobb in particular, I developed a strong bond with Southern literature while working on my master's. Perhaps that was what prompted me to finally open my eyes and consider what this family relic actually was. As you can see, his dust jacket had seen better days and was hanging on by a thread. The title says, "The South to Posterity." I thought, what the heck does that mean? And the author is shown as Douglas Southall Freeman. I was aware of Freeman as the biographer of Robert E. Lee because my grandfather had the 4-volume set in his library, and I remember him reading and rereading it seemingly endlessly. He also had the 4-volume biography of Abraham Lincoln by Carl Sandburg that he would alternate with the Lee biography. He admired both authors as historians, researchers, and writers. As a thoughtful and compassionate Southerner, and truly a man of his times, he often struggled to comprehend the civil rights turmoil he saw that was now swirling through his world in the 1950s and 60s. After he sold his newspaper and retired from the printing business, he would sit up night after night into the wee hours, combing through one or another volume of Lee or Lincoln. He said that he found comfort and enlightenment in revisiting the sources, origins, and reasons that led our country to split into and subject itself to a disastrous civil war. He also said that this reading helped him understand the forces motivating the changes he was witnessing in the contemporary South. His search for understanding continued until his last breath, because when he was hospitalized for the last time, he insisted that he was to have his Lee and Lincoln by his bedside. So, Mac Wyatt's battered copy of Freeman's The South to Posterity was the first breadcrumb he left that would ultimately reveal the events behind the story I will tell you today. The first time I inspected this book, I was surprised to discover an inscription scrawled in tiny handwriting on the very first page. This slide gives you a sense of what it looked like on the page. As you can see from this enlarged version, it reads, "To my esteemed colleague, W.M. Wyatt, with warmest regards, Douglas Southall Freeman." As you might guess, my curiosity was certainly piqued by finding this personalized note from the author of the book. I turned a few pages and quickly came to the foreword that you see here. To my surprise, it was penned by Dr. A.W. Vaughn, who was identified as the chairman of the faculty committee on the Dancy lectures, and it had a dateline of October 1939 from Alabama College in Montevallo, Alabama. I knew of Dr. Vaughn by reputation, even though he died in 1948, the year before I was born. He was a long-serving chairman of the English department at Alabama College, having joined the faculty in 1928. Dr. Vaughn explained in his 3 paragraphs that part of the contents of the book he was introducing was delivered as 3 addresses by Douglas Southall Freeman at Alabama College in April of 1939 to inaugurate the Dancy Lecture Series. When she died in 1932, Miss Unity Dancy in Morgan County, Alabama, left a gift of $12,500 to, quote, endow the departments of English, Literature, and Expression at Alabama College. In the program initiating the series, there appeared a clarifying statement. This statement of purpose by Miss Dancy, it read, has been interpreted to mean that the Dancy Fund shall be used to extend or supplement the services of the English and speech departments of the college. By authority of the Board of Trustees, the income from this endowment will be used in support of a lecture foundation devoted to Southern literature and speech in relation to the national culture. Every second year, a scholar critic of recognized authority will be invited to present in a series of lectures at the college the results of special research or fresh criticism on some phase of Southern life and letters. Dr. Vaughn continued that Freeman represents the distinctive service to scholarship that it is hoped the Dancy lectures will foster. He represents also the type of scholar that will be invited to prepare each succeeding series, one recognized above all for integrity and sanity, and qualified to interpret the complex story of sectional aspiration in relation to the national culture. The ambitious goals set down by Dr. Vaughn in his foreword is strongly supported by Alabama College president at the time, Arthur Fort Furman, were quickly realized as the Dancy lectures in the years following Dr. Freeman's appearance have attracted every other year for 80 years a literal who's who of American critics, authors, and scholars. The college was fortunate in obtaining the services of Douglas Southall Freeman for the first series. Dr. Freeman, whose home was in Richmond, Virginia, was the editor of one of Richmond's daily newspapers, Times Leader. He received his PhD from Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. He was also the author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Robert E. Lee in 1934 and a renowned research scholar and military historian. Dr. Freeman, who, as one newspaper said, had little regard for the ordinary limits of human capacity, was known among American scholars as a workhorse. In addition to his regular duties as editor of a leading daily, he had an early morning radio newscast and turned out, in addition to his 4-volume biography of Lee, a 3-volume history of Confederate commanders who served under Lee entitled Lee's Lieutenants, and ultimately a 7-volume biography of George Washington. He also served as professor of journalism at Columbia University and lectured annually at the War College. This photo shows Dr. Freeman with famous World War II military leaders Admiral Chester Nimitz and General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who called on him frequently for assistance as a valued advisor on military history and strategy. He also served as an advisor to Winston Churchill, and during World War I, President Woodrow Wilson depended on Freeman's regular editorials and analysis for guidance in prosecuting that war. The recipient of many honors and member of many boards, he was also in frequent command as a lecturer on subjects relating to Southern writing and biography. Dr. Freeman gave his 3 Dancy lectures on April 27 and 28, 1939. 2 of these were evening lectures on Thursday and Friday, to which all friends of historical and literary scholarship, especially that relating to life and letters in the South, were invited. The third, actually the middle one, was given at 10:30 a.m. convocation on Friday. The lecturer used as his general title The South to Posterity, a review of Southern historical literature and memoirs since 1865. The first lecture, entitled Writing in the Ashes, was delivered to a full audience on Thursday evening, April 27th in Palmer Hall. Dr. Vaughn presided, and before the lecture, President A.F. Herman gave a brief welcome and explanation of the series, and the college orchestra played several numbers. The lecture was, in brief, a survey of the writing by Southerners at the end of the Civil War, explaining and defending the so-called lost cause. Margaret Mitchell's now famous Civil War novel, Gone with the Wind, had captured national attention, but unlike anything since Uncle Tom's Cabin a century before. Already having sold 1 million copies just a few years before, and becoming the top fiction bestseller for 1936 and 37, it also won the Pulitzer Prize. In 1940, the Hollywood adaptation, starring Clark Gable and Vivian Leigh, was released to universal acclaim and remains an American film classic. As of 2014, 30 million copies of the novel have been published worldwide. In 1939, the year Dr. Freeman came to Montevallo, thanks to the nationwide interest in the Old South generated by the product of Miss Mitchell's imagination, many Confederate historians were bombarded with requests asking, "What shall I read next?" To answer these innumerable inquiries for suggestions of further writings of the Civil War era, Douglas Southall Freeman assembled as the basis for his dancing lectures a bibliography of the best narratives, memoirs, and other works, those that tell their stories simply, with wit and realism, that provide a good introduction to the subject. The Friday morning lecture was restricted to a discussion of the official records of the War of the Rebellion, which contained the voluminous correspondence and other materials from both the Federal and Confederate military leaders. At its conclusion, this massive project produced 128 volumes and represents the condensation of military documents that filled more than a few multi-story warehouses. Dr. Freeman described it as the most notable publication of its kind in America, or for that matter, in the world. In the concluding lecture, Apotheosis in Realism, he praised Southern women for the heroic part they played in the war, and pleased local pride by singling out 3 Alabama women, Mrs. Arthur F. Hopkins, Mrs. Ann Toolman Hunter, and Mrs. Clement Clay, as heroines worthy of the respect of the nation. In addition, he denounced popular ideas of the glamour of war. "You may have concluded war is romantic," he said. "It is not. It is everything that Sherman said it was." When asked why he wrote about military history and yet denounced war, he replied, "I hate war because I've studied it." I doubt that it was intentional, but neither my grandfather nor my mother or anyone else had ever mentioned to me the inaugural dancing lectures and that Douglas Southall Freeman had come to Montevallo to deliver them. I decided to find out as much as I could about what appeared to be one of the most memorable events to ever take place on the AC campus at that time. Now that I knew from my grandfather's inscribed copy of the South's Posterity that he must have had some kind of connection or involvement in the goings-on, it was logical to look for the coverage he gave to it in his own newspaper. What I found confirmed my speculation. Numerous social events, including luncheons, suppers, receptions, and concerts, took place during the 2-day duration of the lecture series. So many journalists from all over the state descended on Montevallo to report on the sessions that it seemed to devolve into a convention of newspapermen. In one of his accounts of a particular luncheon hosted by President and Mrs. Harmon that ran in the Montevallo Times, Mac Wyatt let his admiration for the guest of honor cloud his journalistic objectivity when he wrote, "The occasion afforded a never-to-be-forgotten opportunity for the visitors to enjoy the superb personality of Dr. Freeman, who is at his best when he talks, laughs, jokes, and philosophizes in the main of freedom and informality of a conversational group. Every person who had the honor and pleasure of this occasion will always feel indebted to Dr. and Mrs. Harmon for making possible for us one of the richest hours of life." But Mac was not the only journalist waxing eloquent about what they heard and saw during their visit. Here's some quotes from the coverage by the Birmingham Age Herald. Dr. Douglas Southall Freeman prefaced the last of his 3 Dancy Foundation lectures at Alabama College Friday night with a moving, not in the least merely courteous declaration that he had never encountered a finer spirit on a college campus than at Montevallo, and that he had never enjoyed a more delightful visit. Dr. Freeman is not only one of the first-rank American minds of this day, he is more than his remarkable, many-sided, widely achieving career, embracing distinguished work as an editor, a biographer, a teacher, both of journalism and of military history, and a civic servant in many activities. That which is perhaps most remarkable of all about him is the stimulating, heartwarming spirit that is behind all his achievements. He is a man, one feels, who is living life on the upper level, keenly alert and broadly aware in mind, deeply engaged and stirred in spirit, and above all, committed to the service of the highest. It is a deeply renewing experience to meet and sense such a spirit. I don't read writing much like that anymore. But there were other realities in Montevallo besides Dr. Freeman that were exceptional, he said. There was that unmistakable spirit of the college, its teachers, its students, and its beautiful campus to which Dr. Freeman testified. Upon his return to Richmond, Dr. Freeman promptly composed the following note of thanks addressed to the Alabama College president. Dear President Harmon, I take advantage of the first hour in my office after my return to make to you my most grateful acknowledgments. I never saw better arrangements for a series of lectures, nor in all my journeying was I ever more graciously entertained. The 2 days at Montevallo will always remain a bright spot in my memory. Of all the faculty, of all the girls, and above all of you and Mrs. Harmon, I shall cherish the most admiring recollections. Gratefully yours, son Douglas Freeman. My investigation into the inscription in my grandfather's copy of the South of Posterity quickly took me to the realization that the book had been published in conjunction with Dr. Freeman's delivery of the inaugural Dancy Lectures in 1939. It was obviously an effective way to bring instant credibility to the lecture series and also preserve and make available to the general public the material that Dr. Freeman had prepared for the occasion. But I was still scratching my head trying to understand how the inscribed copy of the book come into his possession. Had Dr. Freeman returned to Montevallo for a book signing after they came off the press some months later? That would be a logical explanation, but I found no evidence of any book signings or that such a return visit for this purpose had occurred. I then decided to see if I could find out if anyone had put together a biography of the great biographer himself, in hopes that it might contain some clues. I was gratified to discover that David E. Johnson, a fellow Virginian and a former senior counsel for the Attorney General of the state of Virginia, had undertaken and published Douglas Southall Freeman, just such a biography in 2002. I was soon able to obtain a copy of the Freeman biography, which proved to be very helpful ultimately. But before getting to the end of my quest, I found in the biography a rich but surprising vein of additional information about the publication of South of Posterity. While Freeman undeniably took the Alabama College campus by storm and became the toast of the town in the process, and did probably enjoy his visit a great deal, a profound misunderstanding between the author and his hosts had bubbled under the surface before he ever got to town. Somehow, Freeman had not heard, understood, or was even aware of the expectation by Dr. Vaughn and the Dancy Foundation that they planned to publish the lectures in book form at the conclusion of the inaugural series. Upon learning this news, Freeman wrote to his editor at Scribner's, "If I had understood at the time that the lectures were to appear in book form, I would not have agreed to accept the invitation to deliver them." His biographer says, given his usual thoroughness in matters of time and business, it would be highly unusual for Freeman to miss such a defect. So somewhere in the beginning, communication about these plans to publish broke down or was never established. Now that he found himself caught in an agreement, he saw no polite way out. He's quoted as saying, "Inasmuch as the Alabama people seem intent on publishing the lectures, I shall, of course, have to devote them considerable research, much more than otherwise I would have put on them. Confound them." Freeman's annoyance of being forced to write another book stemmed not so much from the misunderstanding about the contract or the difficulty in transposing lectures into a publishable manuscript. It was more that he was so looking forward to getting back to work on Lee's Lieutenants, which he had started in 1936, and that the prep work on South Posterity would take more time than he cared to give. Ever the consummate professional, Dr. Freeman grudgingly interrupted the pleasant 2 months of work he had resumed on Lee's Lieutenants and began the writing on South to Posterity on July 18, 1939. About this work, he said, "To make it effective as a series of lectures, I had to pitch it rather low and to inject numerous personal reminiscences of Confederate work and Confederate leaders. When the time came to revise the lectures so that they would escape the stigma of being lectures, I had, in effect, to write the whole book. I've never been keen about publishing this volume, but I've gone to work and tried to make it as good as I know how." Exactly 1 month later, he put the book, which he described as readable, in the mail to Scribner's. Trust me, it's more than readable. As mentioned previously, the Freeman biography coming into my possession opened the door to the resolution of my dilemma about the origins of Mac White's personalized copy of the South Posterity. As I went through Johnson's book in 2014, I discovered that he had included this page showing what's called a palm card distributed by the Richmond News Leader when Dr. Freeman became its new editor in 1915. Not only did it portray Freeman in silhouette, but it also displayed what appeared to be his handwritten cursive signature. I immediately compared the Freeman signature to the one written in the book inscription and definitely saw similarities, but it was not an exact match. I noticed that the primary difference was that the inscription was printed and not in cursive script. How interesting. Now it seemed that I was beginning to get something. Knowing that biographers often are much more in tune with their subjects and know more than they were able to include in their writing, I decided to try to track down David E. Johnson and put my questions about the inscription to him, just in case he might be able to shed some light on this quest. After some twists and turns, I was able to get an email message to him, and in a reply, he confirmed for me that I had indeed found Dr. Freeman's biography. In the email, I asked him if it was possible that Freeman had returned to Montevallo for a book signing, but his quick response was that that would not have happened because Dr. Freeman did not conduct book signings as authors do today. I then asked him about an entry I had discovered in an introduction to a 1983 edition of the South Posterity that stated that Freeman had requested 100 authors' copies in a letter to Scribner's that accompanied his manuscript in August of 1939. I asked if he thought that my grandfather's inscribed copy might have been included with this group of books. In his next reply to me, Mr. Johnson minced no words when he stated, "The inscription to your grandfather is most certainly authentic. Having spent years in Dr. Freeman's paper, I can vouch for his handwriting. Also, a little known fact is that Dr. Freeman signed his books in a distinctive script different from the cursive signature he used on all other documents. Through the years, I've had to settle many disputes over signed items, some of which are in the near print style he used in books, others using a different style. As to how Dr. Freeman may have inscribed Mac White's copy of the book, Mr. Johnson said that Freeman compiled what are called presentation lists during the writing process, which listed those to whom he wished to send an inscribed copy. When the book was ready, he would request however many he needed from Scribner's and send them out. I'm certain that there is a presentation list for South Posterity in Dr. Freeman's papers, and it's as certain that your grandfather's name is on it, Dr. Freeman would have been particularly attentive to a fellow newspaper editor. The circumstances here fit the scenario Dr. Freeman followed with all his books. The presentation list for R.E. Lee went into the hundreds. So I believe you are well within facts to state that this copy is one of the first 100 off the press, described by Dr. Freeman and sent to your grandfather because of his association with the lecture series. As I look back on this interesting case of sleuthing, which I believe anyone interested in history secretly enjoys, I have to think that the chances of me uncovering the story behind the origins of this family keepsake must have been exceedingly slim. I could just as easily have never tracked down David Johnson, or he might not have known the important details that led him to his conclusions. In any case, I must admit, it's very satisfying to finally have a plausible and credible explanation for how Mac Watt's personalized copy of his eyewitness book came into his possession. His strong connection to Monterey, the town he loved, makes it even more important and special as a reminder that he once walked the earth and that his spirit remains among us. Now, if you're interested in getting a copy of the South of Posterity, I know there's one copy in the Carmichael Library at the University of Monterey, so don't step on each other's toes trying to get to it. It is out of print. The hardcover book is out of print. You can find copies through Amazon for the booksellers. This is what the hardback looks like. It's also officially still in print for the LSU Press. It's a paperback. This is what the paperback looks like. If you go to their website, this is the page where you can find it. But it will come back as being not currently available. I think they must be waiting for enough orders to actually go back and print more copies. But there are plenty of these paperbacks also available through Amazon at some very good prices if you're curious. But that's their website, lsupress.org. If you just got to have a brand new copy, you have plenty of time to wait. So that is it. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
As a historian, I'm in awe of the production of Douglas Southall Freeman.
Right.
Those 18 volumes that you had there, I've read some of Southall Freeman's work. I think nobody would believe me if I said I read it all, so I won't do that. But that is being prolific. And I will bet you that if you put those 18 volumes in a box, there aren't very many men in here who can lift it. They are big books. The Washington, 7-volume Washington biography, all of them are 100 pages. And it's just amazing that anybody could have that kind of production, especially if he's the editor of a newspaper and running a newspaper.
And doing radio broadcasts.
And the guy never slept, apparently.
Well, I'll give you just a little bit of background. I had the pleasure. Does anybody remember who James J. Kilpatrick was? He used to be a commentator on 60 Minutes sometimes. He was just probably the definition of the word curmudgeon. He was just, he was just a grouchy old guy. But he worked for Freeman at the Richmond Times-Leader. And when I was at Southern Living, we had him come and speak to us about sort of the nicety of the editing, that sort of thing. But he got off on talking about Freeman for a little bit. And he told us that he woke up every morning at 2:30 and wrote. And he mapped out everything he did ahead of time and knew what he was going to write, when he was going to write it. Imagine having the time to do that on top of doing all that. And the Washington that you're referring to, he only completed 6 volumes of that. There's a 7th volume that someone else completed. And I have to believe this just because of what the fact said. The legend is that he wrote the last sentence of the 6th volume of Washington one morning, and he died that afternoon.
I've read some of Washington and Lee's Lieutenants. I haven't read the others, but he was a fine historian as well as a great editor. There aren't very many people around who've been that prolific. I think Theodore Roosevelt wrote 30 books. The only president who did something like that. He was a Harvard graduate and a prolific writer as well. Most people don't know that. But he wrote The Winning of the West and a ton of other books. And I'm just amazed that anybody
I was quoting Lucille Griffith, who said he was a workhorse, and pretty much describes what he must have been like.
I think Lucille met him or knew him or something. I think she told me that one time.
Yes.
In that period of writing those, where would he have done the original research? Would he have handed it on to the National Archives? Or?
He had a number of staffers that he could depend on to do a lot of the tracking things down and bring it through. But he had a really elaborate system of index cards that he would use. That he would spend all kinds of time assembling those things, lining them up, and he would use that when he started writing. So that if something popped into his brain, apparently he said that he could find anything in 2 minutes in those cards. So, it's just, anybody like Norman who's had to teach how to write a term paper, just imagine the comparison. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.